Okay, so whenever anyone is checking this out, welcome. Thanks for joining us again here. We've been teasing this. Adam and I have been teasing this both, not just on Major Detroit Chats, but also Channel 451 Stuff for Tunnel Talk. We've been teasing. We're having a special episode coming down the pipeline because just of getting the special episode here with Detroit City OG. And I say this not just as far as being a player on the original side, all the way even to the 2017 MPSL Mondi with the right foot era, to being one of the OG ownerships. Dare I say, as I fun banter, the patron saint of the Detroit City FC ownership. And even though there is one sin that you do have a good story on, which we'll talk about on. And currently, lately, you've been seeing him not only on color commentary in the last home match with Neil Rule, the Hartford Athletic match on August 31st, but also coaching this USLW League side of this past season that went all the way to the national semifinals. David Dwaihy, it is an honor. Welcome to the Detroit City Sportscast, and you haven't gotten tired of us yet, so thank you for joining us tonight.
I will never tire. I appreciate it as always. Thank you guys for having me on, and really looking forward to chatting.
David is one of the owners that people typically don't yell at.
I need to keep that going for as long as possible.
I think yeah, that's what Garrett's getting as the patron saint. So
I was just gonna listen to this and be like, oh, what did I do now?
Yeah, I get to be like the fun uncle of the ownership group, right?
No, that's a perfect way of putting it. Yeah, you are the fun uncle that lets us have candy and pop when Sean and Alex aren't looking.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sean's afraid to say no. Alex is more than comfortable saying no. Todd's in the back making sure everything's operated and formulated and ready to go. So for this, so it all rolls out. He's got to roll. So let's start off with. It's been almost 2 months. I think it will be 2 months this week since the USLW League season came to an end in the national semifinal. Keyworth Stadium hosting Detroit City FC taking on Colorado Storm, a match that was a hard-fought contest. Colorado Storm won that to get to the final. And I know we all were feeling at that a sense of pride and a sense of battle and everything like that. Since that time has passed, David, how are you feeling about that now that there's been some time? If you've talked to any of the squad or even like I know Danny, Eliza, and any of the staff, how are you feeling about this season that was?
Oh yeah, I mean, great. In a word, great. Like it's one of those things. I feel like the more time and space I have from it, the more I kind of revel in the memories of it. It wasn't that long ago. Only 2 months, but it feels now like it's we've got enough distance from it that you can kind of look back on it as a season of the past. And every memory, I just keep getting like fresh memories of it, moments that I had forgotten about, just little nuggets of happiness, like so many success stories, so many great moments on and off the field, so many wonderful relationships that were either new this summer with the addition of some new players and coaches, or for the second year, just revisited. And just such a great dynamic. To put it simply, I felt like pretty much everything went well. And, there's like that saying that everything's smooth and easy when you're winning. And I think there was definitely an element of that, but we still had plenty of adversity. There were still some lows. That last game was certainly a low in terms of the result, but even in the midst of that, I don't know, it was unique. I've been a part of a lot of seasons as a coach. I've been coaching high school soccer for over 20 years now. And I've had plenty of seasons end where it takes a couple days to like get over that last loss because it stung, and you feel for the kids and you feel for the parents who have seniors and they're moving on. And, there's all this emotion and drama. And, that game against Colorado was in many ways no different. It was a heartbreaking loss. We gave up a goal in the added time, and yet like almost immediately I felt okay about it. I just felt like we gave it our best shot. We fielded an incredible team at that point in the season. We lost. We went down swinging in front of our adoring fans. Like, you just I couldn't have picked a better way to end it. And even, obviously, like, winning and going to the national championship would have been amazing. But in some ways, I felt like it was more authentic Detroit City FC to have this amazing season and yet not quite achieve the ultimate goal, still have something to strive for, still have something to keep us hungry for next year. It all felt right, and I was able to get over it very quickly for that reason. And, there's still moments where you're like, oh, if only we had scored in the 70th minute when we had that golden opportunity. But the truth is, I think we have to look back at that game and recognize we were second best to that team. They beat us in a lot of categories, and they were deserved winners. So, we tip our hat to them and look forward to trying to recreate the magic that got us there this year, next year in 2025.
What kind of challenge did you face as a coach, David, as far as, some of the rotation in and out of the squad throughout the year? Because it just seems incredibly difficult as a head coach, having players come and go throughout the season and, trying to maintain a cohesion amongst the group, because, especially in soccer, I mean, that just seems like it's so important to maintain that cohesion, maintain that chemistry. How tough was that throughout the year to kind of maintain that success as the season went on?
Yeah, that's really my biggest job, I think, in terms of managing, keeping the players motivated and happy and feeling valued and feeling like they're getting opportunities and like they're being seen. Like, it's obviously a really tough 18 to crack each week with the group we had in place. And so there's a lot of players that are putting it, full throttle in training, and they feel like they're making strides and having moments, and yet you got to weigh everything. And sometimes you're disappointing those players. But, I think what really helped, we had some dumb luck. Sometimes it just works out. Sometimes there's like two players that you're going to have to choose between, and you're like, man, how am I going to pick? And then one of them texts you and says, I'm going to a wedding this weekend. And you're like, oh, thank goodness. Like, it worked out. That worked out perfectly. Yeah. I didn't have to disappoint someone or make a decision that was going to affect someone's confidence negatively. The decision got made for us. And so you hope for a little bit of that along the way. But what, I think the biggest lesson I took from the first year was that the women at this level, they really appreciate honesty and transparency, and they don't want empty promises. Like, I think they want you to shoot them straight and let them know if you're not necessarily in their plans. But the one thing I was always able to reassure them was, like, stick around. Hopefully you'll get something out of this, whether you're dressing or not. Hopefully the training is worth it and the environment is worth it. And I think it really was. This year we had an amazing environment at training. But even still, like, stick around, your chance will come. You'll get an opportunity. And I think for the most part that turned out to be, it came to fruition. Like, almost everyone on our very large roster got at least one opportunity to dress. There were a few exceptions, and there were a few times where we were about to give someone that opportunity, but they happened to be unavailable. But I think for the most part, everybody trusted that we were doing everything we could to work them in. And then I also think that what we had that really worked in our favor was we had an amazing dynamic between the players, and there was never any, at least, on the surface, there didn't seem to be any jealousy or resentment. And so when we would pick an 18, and we always tried to pick the strongest 18 we could, I think objectively a lot of the women who were left out were able to look at that and say, like, well, it's a darn good 18. Like, I'm not ashamed to be left out of it. I'm going to keep pushing, but I know they're trying to do what's right for the team. And so I think we got a really good collective buy-in from anyone. And so the job became easier as the season went on. And obviously positive results helped to reinforce those decisions. But I think everybody was just bought in to the team concept. And, whether for them it meant sitting out of the 18 or being someone who came off the bench or starting, like, everybody was happy to embrace their role.
A season that was full of many wonderful moments, any first for the women's portion of Detroit City FC. I know there's a few off the top of my head that I know I enjoy personally, like, what are the high ones? But in a season that of magnificent results, magnificent moments, Gabby Schreiber last 2 weekends ago getting the Black Arrow Award for the women's MVP. What are some of those your personal favorite moments of that season, and like anything that you wanted to add about with Gabby getting the MVP?
Yeah, probably too many to cover, but off the top of my head, I think like there are two like individual success stories that I thought Hannah Crum had just like an amazing year for us, and she to me was like the epitome of what was right about this team. She was always happy to do what was best for the group. She was grateful anytime she got into an 18. She was grateful anytime we started her, and like she made the most of every minute on the field. She was like kind of in many ways the center of the locker room. Like she's just a fun person to be around, and it was really neat to see her have a relatively successful season. I thought first year she didn't get a ton of opportunities, and people just weren't aware of her yet. And then she kind of burst onto the scene this year. Her story was really gratifying to witness. I think you could say something similar for Addie, who at the beginning of the season wasn't playing a ton. I know she wasn't thrilled with her minutes. There were a couple games where she wasn't in the 18, and she just like she took that as motivation and flipped it completely and became someone that you couldn't take off the field. She was such a threat. She was so hungry. So it was really neat to see her transformation this season, and for her to get the big goals that she got down the stretch. I think about the one against Midwest, the first time we beat them. That was a really special moment. The one against Indy 11 to seal that game that put us into the national semi. The one against Kalamazoo. And so I thought she had a real, red letter summer in many ways after a slow start. And then the young players, Lily Jekyll, Aubrey Champa, Ava Lanstra, Tyra Chu, that group of Nationals players that joined us. I mean, we knew about Lily, but I think the way those other players came into the fray and won minutes and got it done. I mean, that first game against Flint, Lily Jekyll was like the best player on the field, and announced herself in that game and put us on the map with that win. Gabby, that whole arc, especially I don't think people realize this, and it wasn't something we talked about much because we didn't want other teams to be aware, but she injured herself pretty significantly in what proved to be the last Arena League game. And it was really touch and go. Like we weren't sure if she was going to be available for the first game. I mean, there were a couple training sessions in those weeks that led up to the season where like it wasn't looking good. And she's such a fighter, and she was so determined. And it was one of those things where I think a lot of people were like, "You're not going to play her, are you?" And I was like, "I'm not going to stop her." Like she was hell bent on getting out there. And I mean, what a job she did for us. And I think it's very obvious the impact she has on the field, but I tried to allude to it in my remarks at halftime on Saturday. Like the way she galvanized things from the locker room, purely in terms of like commitment. I mean, I feel like the typical summer league team, you get a lot of like coming and going. Commitments are very hard to secure and to maintain. And like Gabby is such a great example for other players to follow. Like we had like this amazing like attendance at training, availability for games, even at the end as people were being drawn in different directions and called back to school. We had players making huge sacrifices just to be there. Ella Offer postponed her return to college so that she could play in that last game. Ella Kane flew back from Louisville after heading off to school. Her coach gave her permission to come. Like we had a lot of players make some pretty noteworthy sacrifices just to kind of help us field the best team possible at the end. And I attribute a lot of that commitment to the example that Gabby set and the standard that she set.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, David, about Gabby in particular. I think that's something that fans and supporters of the club need to hear.
Right.
In regards to Gabby, considering all the off the field stuff that has happened and everything, and I think a lot of opinions get misconstrued when it comes to players and when it comes to the values of the club of Detroit City FC. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to highlight when it comes to the impact that Gabby has. You just did, but I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to highlight when it comes to the impact that Gabby has really off the field, because we know how good she is. I mean,
Yeah.
she's undoubtedly the best women's keeper that, in the
Yeah.
short time frame that this club has ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
But that impact off the field, because everything that we've seen, and I'm speaking for Garret, and I'm speaking for myself as well, that her teammates love her.
Mm-hmm.
The coaching staff loves her. And yeah, the team wouldn't be where they're at this season without Gabby on the field. But can you confirm that they wouldn't be where they are off the field or on the field as well without Gabby and her presence off the field as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing I'd add is, I've spoken with her many times, and we spoke throughout that period of last year where things were difficult for her and for the club, and things were, awkward in some ways. And what really stood out to me was, like in our conversations with one another, I mean, she loves this club. She loves Detroit City FC, and she appreciates and supports what the club is all about. And as an individual, she really does. And I think, I don't want to speak for her, but what I would maybe point to is I thought it was really telling the way she received the award. She had a very difficult time last year in terms of, everything that was going on. And it was her team, like her teammates and the friendships she's formed in this team, that really got her through that time. And like you pointed to the fact that like everyone on the team really loves her and respects her and admires her. And it's definitely a two-way street. She loves her teammates. She will go to bat for her teammates. She loves her coaches. She's respectful and committed and loyal, and she loves the club. And she's extremely honored to represent Detroit City FC. If you heard some of the talk she gives before the games or even on the field right before we play, there's a real theme to her message, and it's always along the lines of, we play for a very special club. We share this, she likes to use that expression, like, we bleed city blood, and it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, she is an inspirational leader who loves her team and loves her club. And, I think, like you said, there's a lot of, misconception out there. And I encourage people to get to know her as a person and as an individual. And I think, they would quickly come to the same conclusion that I have, which is she's a deserved captain and she's a steward for this team.
A little self-promotion in a sense, that if people want to get to know Gabby a little bit more, Red actually conducted an interview with her. I think it was, Garret, was that last year or 2 years ago? I think it was last year.
Within the last year or two. That is in one of the earlier 451 Tunnel Talks.
So go back and listen to that. Definitely.
Y'all, the both of you talked well about camaraderie, and I think we had it talked about in our chats, on air, in post sessions, off air. Coming into W League from that indoor season that was, and that's where, to me, really seeing that nucleus of that squad. You mentioned Hannah Crum, you mentioned Kayla Addison, the Danny Evans coach side, a team that had camaraderie, had swagger on the pitch, had swagger on the bench. I think Fatima Nasser's quote said, always sticks out to me, the first Waza game. 1-0 up after the first period, Danny asking everybody, are y'all having fun? Doesn't look like you're having fun. They scored 7 in that second quarter. But how much do you feel like, with that nucleus of I won't say full year, but the non-college, so Hannah, Kayla, Gabby, Danny and Eliza coaching, Fatima Nasser, who I don't know if she had any W League minutes, but she was still a big piece of that indoor, the connection. And how much do you feel like that, in Bella Sabo too, and any others that I'm forgetting, how much do you feel
Britton, Claire Chirlino, yep.
Yeah. How much do you feel like that that indoor league season helped create the spark for what was the W League we saw summer?
Yeah, I thought it was massive. I mean, there's no way we have the season that we had outside if they didn't have the season that they had inside. I think you covered the spectrum of players there. I think Amanda is definitely a name that needs to be mentioned. Her commitment, outstanding. She's someone that
too.
What's that?
Tatiana Mason also. I just remember that one.
Absolutely, yeah. And I almost didn't include Tot in that group because she was like, such a unique story in terms of like her trajectory to the professional level. And before I forget, she's in Vietnam right now playing in the Asian Champions League. So
oh wow,
pretty cool for her. Yeah, so hopefully we can get some specifics on her club and her status, but she's just waiting on clearance right now. But yeah, so many great transitions for players, like from that arena level to the outdoor season. They hit the ground running. They were fit. They were hungry. They were all, I think it probably bears mentioning that like there was maybe a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth losing in that semifinal and wanting to like immediately get after it again. And the commitment from those players was outstanding from day one. But I really think a lot of that credit goes to Danny Evans as a coach, as a person, as a leader. It's such a privilege to coach with her, to work with her, and the way that the women respond to her. She is like vital to everything that went well this summer, and especially in terms of like the locker room stuff. I mean, I could tell you 25 stories off the top of my head, moments where only Danny could do what she did. Like, there's no, like, there are times where we joke and I'm just like, thank you so much for doing that thing that there's no way I could have done.
Now I know that you're saying that.
Yeah. And, I have so much respect for her as a player, as a coach. She's a brilliant soccer mind. But she also, people talk about like, some people are great coaches, but they're not great managers. She's got such a skill set for both, like her soft skills, the way she addresses a group. She just commands respect, but like in this fun and like genuine way. They really respond so well to her. I mean, it's her team. I hope it'll become her team. I'd love nothing more than to hand it off at some point soon, and when she's ready, when life is in a good place for her with family. But she was integral to the success and into that transition between I'm forgetting the acronym already, but the Arena League season and the W League season. And really she, in terms of building that roster out, she got us Tot, who was like an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle this summer. And I think she helped Hannah Crum come in the confident version of Hannah that we saw. And I think she taught Addie quite a bit over the course of those couple months that made Addie a more polished goal scorer. And so really so much credit goes to not just that experience, but the coaching that those women got from Danny over the course of those few months. And I'm thrilled that she'll be doing it again this winter.
It does seem like there's a cool dynamic between you two, like a good contrasting, and I don't know, maybe is there a good contrasting in styles and approaches when it comes to coaches between you and Danny?
For sure. And I want to bring Nate Northup into that. It's very much like a trio. And most people don't know much about Nate. He's kind of like, he stays out of the limelight. Danny gets spoken about as the Arena League coach. I get spoken about as the W League coach. But, he's a really big piece of the puzzle as well. He and I met in the high school world, and we worked together at Liggett. And he's a brilliant coach in his own right. I think the three of us really work super well together, and the other assistant coaches as well. But just in terms of like the primary decision making and decisions on personnel and who to play where and when, it's really a neat dynamic in terms of like the way we're able to reach consensus. And we don't always agree on things, but I think we respect each other's opinions so much that like whoever's making the most sense, we just gravitate toward that and go with it. It's really awesome to work with them. And there were a lot of really cool moments, like, trying to give the people what they want here, some behind the scenes stuff. Like when we beat Kalamazoo at home, and Tot dropped that bomb. like 30 seconds prior to her putting that thing in, we were like, I think I was the first one who said it. I was like, she's like a little off today. Tot's not herself. She's struggling a little bit. She needs to like step it up, like in a good way. I was like, she's so much better than this. And I was kind of like saying, we need to give her, I think I said it out loud. I was like, we need to give her a boost, like we need to say something. And like, before I could get that sentence out, Danny stands up, starts screaming her name. Tot's like 40 yards away and in the midst of the crazy crowd. So like, I almost told Danny, like, there's no way she's going to hear you, Danny. Like, we'll talk to her at the water break or whatever. Danny keeps yelling her name. Tot turns around, and I'm thinking Danny's going to say, like, what I said, like, hey, you're better than this. Get after, like, give her some words of encouragement. All Danny says to her, I kid you not, she goes, Tot, shoot it. And like 30 seconds later, the ball falls to her, and she ripped it. And we all just looked at each other like some Jedi mind trick. And it wasn't the first time she'd done something like that. Danny just knows what needs to be said at the right time. And then the other one that was akin to that, when we played Riverlight in the first playoff game, it was 1-0, second half. And we had taken a few corners that game, and we had been like dangerous on them, but we weren't quite connecting. And we had played the same corner over and over. It was like that back post in swinger, and we just weren't getting on the end of it. And Scotty Vlojic, one of the assistants, my buddy, who I met in the high school world as well, he goes, hey, we should do a near post corner. We should mix it up. And Nate Northup, who's sitting next between me and Danny, Nate goes, yeah. And we're like, we get a corner as they're having this conversation. Like the ball's getting knocked out and Pad is running over to it, and like the players are lining up. And Nate says to me, and I was like half paying attention. I was just, I was kind of like, oh. And Nate says to me like, yeah, can I go say something? And I was like, yeah. I like thought he was joking. He gets up, he starts running down the sideline. I actually joked. I was like, don't leave the technical area, even though, who cares, right? So yeah. we don't have a technical area at Keyworth. He sprints down the line. You can actually watch this. You see it happen on the stream. He gets into the camera right as Padge is getting ready to take it. He gets like 5 yards away from her, and he goes, Padge, go near post. And like, you can see her like nod. She plays it near post, and Lily Jekyll jumps off the goalie because she had been like the one assigned to the goalie. She jumps off and heads it in 2-0. And then you see Nate like run away like a kid that stole some candy. And he's just like all smiles. Like, we just had some moments like that this year where like the dynamic within the coaching staff, I think it was so healthy and there was so much mutual respect. I feel like that got rewarded, like the universe rewarded that with some goals.
Adam's going to love that. I'm going to talk about this. I think we've talked about it before as a group because you brought up some good coaching stories. So that moment for that, so we started doing in some of the Fridays and Saturdays where if we're attacking that half and the corner suite's open, we'll go because it's good for camera shots and everything like that. So to be able to see that close on, because that was an inch perfect ball, and you also had to see how high Lily got up to get that header. And then that game, Ella Kane,
and Fago.
She apologized to me profusely, even though she did not need to. So she's we get another in because Padge made it 3-0. Emily made it 3-0 after with her first bang, first week back.
And Ella Kane made that goal, yeah.
Yeah, and Ella's going full sprint with somebody down, not right at the corner flag, but in between the corner flag and where you start to get into the touchline. And she keeps going. I'm like, oh, I'm going to move out of the way. And she almost knocks the table over, which, granted, it's not a strong weight table still. But Liquid Death, can of Fago Cola, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. I'm fine. That's good. It says you're fine. It's something that matters. Adam's going to know what I'm going to talk about. Ann Arbor.
The Strat.
So we had a much closer vantage point in Ann Arbor, because we're like, hey, how are we going to get in, right? Because, it's a little bit different in there. You're local in there. They're like, you got a ticket? We show the crowd. They're like, you're good. Okay, so we get in. We're literally like 15 feet to the left of you guys. And I'm just seeing, like, as you're getting into the game, it was Lily's first game back from a little bit. She was on nationals too. And Adam's, were you next to me, Adam, or were you over on the other end? I think you were
No, I
next
was
to me.
next. I was next to you because it was in play, and Danny was again probably yelling something. Probably to somebody on the other side of the pitch, David, and she must have successfully relayed that message, and something good must have happened because all of a sudden you look over at her and she's just doing this strut down the touch line. And I turned to Garrett.
Entrance.
Yeah, and I turned to Garrett. I'm like, look at Danny. She's actually strutting down the side or down the touch line right now. And,
That's awesome.
so yeah, it was great. I mean, it just seems like it totally felt that it fit that mentality that that Danny seems to have out there.
Yeah, I think
Which
that's
is great.
that's a perfect story because I think she really enjoys coaching. I think, I mean, that's an obvious thing to say, but I think this team in particular, she's really like found herself and found her voice as a high level coach, and she gets a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I think what we were able to do this year that was really unique and special, and I hope it's not a one-off, but I felt like everybody just really had a lot of fun. That was like the prevailing sentiment from a lot of the college players as they were leaving. We got some really nice notes of gratitude from players like Drew Martin and Hannah, and not that Hannah's going off to school, but she said some really nice words that really affirmed what we hoped the experience was for the players. And what Drew said really stuck with me. She's like, I think you as a college player, you really have a lot going on, and there's a lot of demands on you, and the game starts to feel a little bit job-like. And she basically said like her experience this summer kind of helped her appreciate like finding the fun in it again and finding the joy. And I mean that too just gave me goosebumps thinking about the fact that we were, that I and the other coaches were a small part of an experience that was good for her, and that not only made her a better, more confident player, but maybe someone who has rediscovered a little bit of the joy of the game, which is really what it's all about. I think even for those players that go on to be professionals, and many of them won't necessarily do that, but just giving them that gift of like a positive, healthy experience where it's not all about wins and losses. It's not all about minutes played. It's just about being a part of a team and enjoying it. And then, they have the added benefit, all these women have the added benefit of playing for a club that means something, and that has a place in society where it's, that there's a mission and there's a philosophy. And so it's extra special to represent something that's of substance like that. And so, really just delighted to have been a part of it. And yeah.
Speaking of coaching, David, it seems like you have one of your coaches helping out with the men's side right now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, what an amazing, and like that was like it got sprung on me. I was I go to pretty much all the men's games that I can, and we will often sit in that corner suite like with some of the other founding members and stuff, and I usually go there with my family at some point in the match. And a couple weeks ago we go there, and we're right by the tent, the medical tent, and then the players warm up sporadically throughout the game, and games getting going, or warm-ups going, like the game's about to start. And I see Eliza, and she's wearing like the blue, and she's got the EB, and I'm like, what is this? And I felt bad because we ended up talking, and I'm realizing that I'm keeping her from her job. But she obviously she was like full-time sports performance this summer.
Yeah.
In 2023, she was player coach, and focused on playing. She was our captain. She logged a ton of minutes. Got injured at the end, and then the surgery that she opted to have kind of kept her out this season. So she was able to really pour herself into the sports performance aspect of things, and also a little bit more of like a true assistant coach, where she was, I think she kind of kept her distance when it came to like selecting the 18. We would ask her for opinion once in a while, but I respected the fact that she was talking about her teammates. And so, that's all to say that she was definitely more part of the technical staff than she was like the playing side of things. And I think Danny and his staff kind of took notice of, because we had a bunch of unexpected home games, and those guys, to Danny's credit and Trevor and Tiffany, I mean, they're at everything that we do. And I'm getting texts regularly from Danny, well done, congrats, good luck tonight. I mean, those guys really were incredible in their support of the women's team, and some of the players as well. Guys like Michael Bryan are coming on a night off. They're coming out and popping smoke and cheering us on, and without wanting any recognition for it. Just like, they'd send me a text later like, hey, saw the game, awesome job. Like just really authentic support from the men's team. And so another reason to love those guys. But, I'm sorry, I digress. Danny, I think, really saw the value that Eliza brought. He was sitting in that suite front and center, watching her keep our women fresh. And she's extremely good at what she does. I mean, 2 years in a row now, sadly, she's the only player that sustained a major injury over the course of the 2 seasons. And I mean, there's a little bit of luck in that for sure. And we had a couple little things, a little, an ankle here and a tweak there, but no major injuries for anyone. I feel like we sent the college players back to school fresh and fit. And that's in large part due to Eliza and her efforts. She's constantly, weighing in on my, when I send out the plan for training, she's always given me like the sports performance perspective on how hard are we pushing them? What's the load? Let's think about the week. Let's think about the month. I mean, she's really, really good at that. And I think just watching her like put the women through the warm up and the way she's communicating with me and asking me for anticipated substitutions and the timing of things. And I'll have, okay, you're thinking 70th minute, I'll pull them at the 65th and I'll have them ready. And like, she just made us like a well-oiled machine. And I give her a ton of credit because you look at those playoff games in particular, I thought a lot of our substitutions won us or sealed some of those games. You look at Indy 11, the turning point in that game for me was when we put 4 players on and it just
definitely.
it just killed them. Like Indy 11 was already kind of on the ropes and that just like, that put the nail
finished them off.
It did. And like
put on as the subs because you spaced out your starting 11 and your subs to have as much impact whoever comes on.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to give a ton of that credit to Eliza because like those 4 players, they were like, they hit the ground running and we absolutely did not miss a beat. Your big fear in making a 4-player substitution is that you're changing too much, right? You're going to break the rhythm. But like they were totally in sync. And so, I'm getting too detailed about this. Like Danny saw Eliza, really liked what he was seeing and basically asked her if, she could kind of try and do the same thing with the men's team. She's full-time at Michigan State. She's got the women's soccer team there and a number of other teams. So it's a little bit tricky in terms of like the logistics, but the schedule so far has allowed her to come to most of our home games. And then she kind of commutes in and works with the players at times. Like she's kind of doing the job. It's complicated because like, her visa and all that is through Michigan State. And so I don't know what'll happen in the end, but I think it's given her some invaluable experience at the professional level with the men. I think the coaching staff and the men are all really receptive to her and her expertise and her style. She's just very unassuming and disarming and wonderful and German, like she's just got such a cool contrast of sensibilities. And she's just like a total student of the game and of her craft as sports performance. I mean, she's got a ton of talent and many gifts and a nice collection of interpersonal skills. So I really hope it'll lead to something permanent, but it's all up in the air. Yeah, we kind of got to wait and see how it plays out. But even if it doesn't work out, she's got a stable job at Michigan State and she fully intends on being around again next summer with the women. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I think especially that I'm noticing too, because I think it's been 8 matches that I think since the beginning of August that we've seen her in the men's stuff. I mean, only 1 loss. So I think there's an impact about like you're seeing at least being in every game as much as possible or taking those steps, which, seeing how tight that race is vital as we especially hit this. Go on. What were you saying?
No, it's just like during the month of August, during the toughest stretch of the season for them.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And you look at like, I think a measure of her work in many ways is kind of like, the way Maureen is evaluated, like the health of the players. And right now there's no major injuries.
Yeah.
Guys are fresh. And as you pointed out, August was brutal. I mean, there was a crazy stretch of games you almost expect an injury in that phase of the
Yeah.
season. And they got through it unscathed. And, a big part of that too is Danny's rotation. But I still think you gotta give credit where credit's due. The Maureen and Eliza as the people responsible for managing, the health and physical well-being of these guys. Like they're doing a great job. And I can't overstate how impressed I was with the way Eliza did the same on the women's side. And it's really critical for us. I mean, it's critical for the men too, obviously, but it's really critical for us in terms of player retention, because we rely on colleges and universities to trust us with players. And there's no quicker way to break that trust than to have a player pick up an injury through overplaying or overuse. And there's no better way, I think, to maintain that trust than to send them back fresh.
It's the men's NPSL team all over again when it comes to that trust and working with colleges and college coaches and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that goes a long way. And I don't know if I've shared this with you guys, but I sent a message to the Creighton coach as soon as our season ended, and it was announced that Ella Offer had earned first team all league. And I was just like, hey, not sure if you saw this, thanks again for sending her. We loved having her. She was a beast, blah, blah, blah. And he responded, and, he was very appreciative. And then he's like, yeah, you probably won't be surprised to hear this, but she set a school record for the beep test yesterday. Which I think, most of that is just Ella Offer being Ella Offer. But I do think there's a little bit of an element, and maybe he's acknowledging it, that she came in fit. Playing for us helped her maintain her fitness. It gave her some game minutes, and it prepared her well for the priority, which is the college season.
Elisa's got probably we've definitely used this on our things when the handshake line post match and Chad after the Colorado game in the semifinal. Yeah. And Elisa, I was talking about, I dropped the thing I mentioned to her though. Look where we were. 2022, and we talked about it after we beat it after the Indy win in regionals. And where you're at now. And she had that pause. She goes, you know what? We're not having this feeling again next year. And I was almost like, all right, rally cry, spark time. Let's go. Get it ready.
Yeah.
And
put that on a t-shirt for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we got it. Adam dropped it somewhere with the graphics. Says anything you see with graphics, that's all him. And then that's also a good tie-in because you were talking about some of the players. So we have a solid amount of this squad is currently playing in college ball right now. Thinking to the Childer sisters, Sophia Romine in Minnesota, Joya Washington at Georgia. You mentioned Ella Offer, Avery Peters. Is there any updates you have on kind of like what you've been seeing or what some cool things people might be wanting to know about with the Les Rouge sides that are playing college?
Yeah, so a slight edit, just so people know, and this is good news. Joelle's actually finishing her college eligibility at U of D. So you can see her. You can see her locally. She and Michaela Duncan, who not too many people know about because I think she only featured in a couple games for us, but they are both playing at U of D. I saw Joelle's name in the box scores early on. She might have missed a game or two through injury, but I think she's regularly getting minutes there. So check her out and Michaela as well. You mentioned the Minnesota contingent of Allie and Kate Childers and Sophia Romine. They're having a really good start to their season. I don't think they play at Michigan State or at Michigan this year, so they might be a little harder to catch, but they're off to a flying start. Michigan's off to a slow start. I've been in touch with Avery, and but I think they're going to, any team with Avery Peters on it is going to, if they're off to a slow start, they're going to figure it out and they're going to find a way. And her leadership is just unparalleled. And sure enough, they just knocked off top 25 ranked Alabama 1-0. And her and Lily are featuring regularly, and a couple other players that trained with us that I'm hoping will feature next year. Michigan State's off to a killer start, and Adele Francis is getting regular minutes there, which is awesome. Western Michigan with Drew and Paget and Maddie Salzenstein. All three of them are playing regularly, and they're going to be a team to beat in the MAC. And then speaking of the MAC, you've got Maya Solis at Ohio University. And according to Eliza, because she's with Michigan State all the time, Ohio came to Michigan State not long ago, and Maya looked awesome, really sharp and played lights out in the back. Trying to think where else. It's a long list. I'm blanking.
Dane Wayman's at NIU, right?
She transferred to Youngstown, so
Okay.
watch for her there, Youngstown State.
Caroline?
Ella's at Illinois in her last season. And then Alexandra is at Washington University, and they're going to be a D3 powerhouse. Like when the national tournament starts, watch out for them. Man, I feel like there's at least one or two other schools that I'm regularly checking in on, but it seems like all the college. Oh, Ella at Creighton, they're off to a good start, and Acadia Murphy at Ball State. Ball State actually just beat me. They were one of Michigan's early losses, so she's obviously picking up where she left off. And
given the size of the roster, David, I'm impressed that you're able to rattle all that off.
Yeah, and there's more. There's more. There's more. All the Nationals girls, they're now in ECNL on the youth side, and so their games are starting up now. I'm gonna make an effort to come check them out, but that level's incredible. It's worth making a trip for. Bella Sabo's in Spain.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure with which team, but I heard from her recently. She's playing in Spain. Her sister Anna's at Delta, and I got to check out how they're doing, but hopefully she's off to a good start. She was an amazing squad player this summer. And then there's one more player that I think was international.
We announced Tatiana's in Vietnam, or getting that wrapped up.
I think Ken is back in Hungary, but I thought there might be one more.
Grimaldo.
Oh yeah, Naomi's in Mexico doing really well. And then Nicole, who finally got fit by the end of the night, she was dealing with this pretty significant injury all summer, and was trying to get healthy before our season started. I think she's now with the Hawks, so she's playing locally. Yeah, it is a big group. It's a big group to manage, to monitor and see how they're doing. But it seems like all the college players are off to a good start and earning minutes. Paige Radell is at Evansville. I saw she was getting into some of those early games. So yeah, I think it's a healthy state of affairs for the team right now in terms of their off season.
Looking ahead to, I know we're catching an hour here. We're getting close to an hour. So I know you got work and everything. We all got in the whatnot. School's back in session, so I don't want to keep you too late here. But looking ahead to next season, there's a couple of things I know that Garrett and I both want to touch on really quick. It seemed like the success of the women's side was, in my opinion, almost a foregone conclusion, just based on the notoriety of the club itself. Detroit City FC, the crest and everything's really becoming something in the state. It's becoming well known in the state. It's, as far as lower league soccer goes, Detroit City is arguably the biggest name in lower league soccer in the country. So like I was saying, it was almost a foregone conclusion that the success was coming, like we saw this past season. With that said, is there anything different on your end that you're going to be looking to do as we continue throughout this off season? Is there going to be anything that you do different this off season to get recruits in, or just anything that you're just going to look to do different heading into next season, maybe? Or
and anything you may add also, as well as maybe what people could look for on the indoor side with what's we so far.
Yeah. I think at this point, part of the challenge, something that I might have to do a little differently is it might become a little bit of a case of having to be a little bit more selective in like who we bring in, because I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I have a feeling with the season that we just had, and hopefully with a positive experience that the college players are talking about with their college teammates, that we might get to a point where you almost have to either turn some people away or look for another a secondary team to accommodate everyone, because we were pushing it. We carried a player pool of almost 50, And so there were some training sessions that were on the brink of being a little overcrowded. It was a good problem to have. But yeah, maybe that might be something that I have to start really thinking about. Might not be able to say yes to everyone. The one thing that, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that's something that we actually heard heading out of last season was players talking, players wanting to know who weren't on the team last year, how they get on the team next season. I know Garret can attest to that, which is a great feeling to have, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm sure it presents, some more tough challenges for yourself as a head coach, having to eventually turn people away.
Yeah, you guys probably know this about me. Like I don't want to say no to anyone, and these are amazing people. I will say, the one thing it allows me to focus on, because we're obviously getting quality players wanting to be a part of things, and I hope that will continue to be the case indefinitely. But a page that I took from Trevor's book was having conversations with the players before we pursued anything in terms of registration, and making sure that, and obviously there's only so much you can tell from a conversation, but wanting to have certain things in place in terms of the apparent character and personality of the players that were coming in. I think we earlier in our conversation tonight, I mentioned the dynamic within the group was really healthy, and there was no ego, and there was no resentment, and there was a really nice kind of camaraderie within the group. I think that's the natural result of having quality people on the roster. Like you almost you recruit the person first. And I had good length conversations with pretty much everyone that was new this summer, and to a person, speaking with them, exchanging messages beforehand, it was very obvious to me, like, this is a good person. She wants to be a part of this for the right reasons. She's excited, and she's going to be quality. The one that I point to, like the coolest story for me, is Ella Offer. She recruited herself. I didn't. I was totally. She was like, she sent me a message, and she mentioned that she had played for Flint the season before. So we actually played against her. I think she played against us in the first game of the 2023 season, and she basically said, like, I want to be a part of this club. I could tell that you guys do things a certain way, and I want in. And I didn't hesitate. Like we spoke just to confirm things, and it became very clear early on that she was an awesome person, and that she was going to be super committed, and that she wanted to play in that environment that she had experienced in the game at Keyworth when Flint came to us. And I mean, how do you say no to that? And then look how that turned out.
Yeah,
he was a total stud for us. And so I think when you got that going on, when you're not, I mean, we did not actively recruit her. I just I picked the right time to respond to a message, basically. And I hope that continues to be the way that this team forms, because there's nothing better than having players that want to be here. I think when you start having to reach out and convince someone or sell yourself to someone, I think that's when you maybe start to get a little bit unlucky in getting some people in that aren't the best fit, because they feel like they're doing you a favor or something.
Yeah.
I think we really had, across the board, a group of players that were grateful to be here and wanted to be a part of it. So that's one thing that I really hope to do the same in terms of building for 2025.
There was news that came out last week in the form of Detroit Cities Indoor was part of the PASL. The Major Arena Soccer League did an announcement last week announcing further PASL unifying it and PASL women's sides joining to form the MASLW. Nothing was set up schedule-wise, but it looks like that if you go to maslw.com, there's two stand divisions, a Great Lakes division, South division, and Detroit City's listed as like one of those names so far, with teams that we'll know from last year: Cincinnati, Louisville Triumph, Cincinnati Strikers, not Zoo City, much as Adam reminded me of from the old 451 inside joke that I was responsible for creating. Kalamazoo United, former Great Lakes, West Michigan and Mission, and Youngstown. What is there anything whether it's little tidbits for those that are wanting to know, or what you can provide for us so far about what maybe to expect indoor wise as we get towards fall and into the winter?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say, and I don't know exactly how it's going to work with the MASL. I know with the PASL, one really important consideration, I don't know that people are aware of this, although they probably pieced it together. Eligibility for that roster was a little bit tricky. Like I think the high school players could have trained with us if they had wanted to, but they were not eligible to play because it was technically like players were getting paid as professionals, even though it wasn't sanctioned professionalism. We didn't have to like reinstate them as amateurs before the summer or anything. It's like indoors, like a different world. But the fact is, if you're going to have players getting paid, high school players, anyone that wants college eligibility preserved needs to steer clear. And so it's really only open to those who are out of school. And so, I think that would likely limit the roster in a lot of ways, and we'll hopefully see a really similar player pool to what we had last winter. It's possible players like Tatiana Mason, might be back at that point, but if things work out for her in Vietnam, we might lose a couple of those names from last year, and it's the nature of the business. I think some are going to go, but some are going to come in. I think we'll see the same thing with the W League team next summer. But I know Danny Evans is planning on running steering the ship again, and she was really effective at building out a roster last winter. So I'm sure she's going to tap her contacts, and I'm sure she too is already, kind of benefiting from the success of last winter, and to an extent this summer. Players are going to want to come in, especially if they're local already. So yeah, I'm excited to see, how it all unfolds, but I do know that the club is committed to, however we need to make it work, finding a way, because last winter was so fun and such a successful campaign. And I think as an off-season endeavor, it was like, everybody totally embraced it. So hopefully we can do that again.
Maybe with this W League, probably might be my favorite thing I feel like this year was those experiences.
Yeah.
So I highly encourage, you've heard us shill this out enough. I'm saying it again. Didn't make it out to an indoor game last year. Find a way to get to an indoor game. Times are fun. The goals are there. Hannah Crum scores the same goals in indoor as she did outdoor. That little soft turn goal thing, because she did it to Michiana outdoors. I was like, oh my gosh,
it's not an accident.
Oh, it's so good. But what was I going to say here? I'm trying to lose my train of thought. Real quick before we get to the bit that I know I'm going to talk to you about. Super League started a couple weeks ago for USL. Their foray into D1 women's soccer, going in international. What are your thoughts?
We're hoping you can announce the Detroit City FC Super League team on the podcast tonight. That's what we're hoping for.
I would love to.
So
I would love to, but I want people to respect me as an honest person. It's not quite in the stars yet. I will say, I was trying to rack my brain earlier for someone playing internationally. I realize now who I was thinking of. For those who don't know, Sarah Tricoli, who played a few games for us early in the summer, she's with North Carolina Ascent and has been a regular fixture. She started the inaugural game. I think she played the full 90, which was awesome, because when she was with us, she was dealing with some kind of lingering Achilles issues that she was limited to playing like 45 minutes for us. But you really see like her quality at that level, because she's a pro, she's an established professional. And so it's really neat to see her doing her thing and representing Michigan and us in the Super League. And they're doing well. They won they got some good results in their first few games. I think they started with a win and a draw. I haven't checked up on them lately, but she's another great story of the summer, because we kind of became friends and through the whole thing, and we've remained in touch. And like as we were making that playoff run, we have like the Teamworks app where like everybody can chime in the chat and stuff. And at that point, Tatiana had left us, Like those were the first two people after every game in that playoff run to chime in and be like, "Oh my God, I watched the game! Congratulations, you guys look so good. We're so proud of you." Like they became our biggest fans, and like I mean, they had no reason to do that, like they had bigger and better things going on, and yet they still felt part of sort of the magic of the summer, and they felt very connected to their teammates, and it's a testament to their qualities as people. They're just outstanding human beings, Tatiana and Sarah both. So really pleased for both of them, but for Sarah in particular with the Super League opportunity that she's had, it's really neat to see her flourishing.
And I think my closing thought, I think when they opened up, it was Charlotte Memorial, and to have that amount of people for that, it's exciting. I think it's and I feel like, because especially now while we're not in it right now, when you see the advertisements, what's the first thing that you see? It's Keyworth Stadium atmosphere. So I feel like we're excited. We're hoping. So we're hoping that you can tell that news sooner rather than later. And I think Sean's getting tired of us asking the question every single in the Keyworth parking lot behind the stadium. But,
keep asking them. Keep asking.
The last, before we do closing thoughts, now for the part, I said while you were the patron saint, I did say you have one sin. So let me explain what this is. So for those that know, not only did Detroit City FC ownership are very hands-on, they will sometimes run bar at their HQ, the Detroit City Clubhouse. I know you've done that many a time, especially have helped overserve a couple of people that I've drove home after like Nisa game after LA Force. But October 2021, I was there because I was watching my German club lose to a team I think that got relegated that season. But the Premier League matchup that was on, you were attending bar, was Leicester City, Manchester United. Few people around us, including a dear friend of us who's passed, Josh Prentice, who was a Leicester fan. There was an admittance, however, that David Dwaihy is a Manchester United supporter. And you told me that there was a good story for the reason why. So to Adam, who's an Arsenal, and me, is a Crystal Palace, please enlighten us, my friend.
Well, let me just start by apologizing. But I feel like everybody's got a reason, right, that they support their club, and I'll admit I'm pretty equal opportunity. Like I should start by saying, like, I love good soccer. I love the Premier League. I'll watch any game. I love Barcelona mostly because Messi was there, and I'm like the world's biggest Messi fan. So I'm not like I don't have like Manchester United, like a Manchester United bedroom set or anything like that. Like I'm not at that level. But I'm a child of the 80s, but I really got into soccer like in the early 90s. I was in my early I'm born in 80, so like the 94 World Cup was kind of like the first World Cup I really paid attention to. But the 1990 World Cup, which West Germany won, my mother is a native German, and so her father, my grandpa, it's her adopted father, but the grandpa that I grew up with, he gave me the 1990 World Cup season or like highlight review that like followed West Germany through that tournament. And I was I loved soccer so much. I was growing into the game. I was obsessed with it. But there was I couldn't watch it. There was no soccer on TV. I had nothing I could watch. And so I watched that 1990 World Cup review for like 3 years straight. I watched it like 3 times a week. And then all of a sudden in the mid 90s, when World Cup 94 came, Eurosport magazine, which is how you would order your cleats and your gear back then, they started making available season reviews. And at that time, Manchester United was the team that they would offer. And then there was a VHS Eric the King on Eric Cantona. And between like the 95 season review and then Eric the King, like I kind of just started to watch them more than anyone else. And for the most part, at that point, if there was a televised game in the US, it was often featuring Manchester United. So that kind of hooked me. And then I got into college in the late 90s, and then 1999 happened and they won the treble. And I already had an interest in them, and that just locked me in. I mean, like, how glamorous and romantic that was. So I kind of like started following them at just the right time in terms of their success, or, the rejuvenation and their success. And Eric Cantona alone was enough to make you like a team. He was an enigmatic figure, a brilliant player, like super fun to watch, a really cool story, the way he kind of helped them reverse their fortunes, and the way they tapped into the youth at that point with Beckham and Giggs and Scholes in the class of 92. So I kind of got carried away in that. And then I had a bunch of college friends that did the same thing.
I think it's a great story in a way, because it kind of like shows you and think about like I was like 6, I think, when 94 happened. And I think the thing that like World Cup, which is funny that you mentioned like your mother was native German, World Cup 06 Germany was what lent this from I'm watching this every 4 years to I'm going to start watching this or FIFA, because that's when I started my freshman year of college.
Mm-hmm.
Some FIFA in the dorms, next and then Champions League on ESPN 2 times a week. So yeah, I think it's one of those things where, especially that reminder where I bitch about football being rare back then to watch, but then you talked about your growing up where it was like, how hard it is for us to maybe watch cricket here or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or stories on that. You did say your mom was a native German. Is there a German club that you have an affinity from?
Yeah, I mean, she's from Dusseldorf, and so like Fortuna Dusseldorf would be the obvious choice. But I've actually the team that I had the deepest connection to is Leverkusen, and it's funny because now they're killing it. But in the early 2000s, I went and I visited family there, and I went and saw a match, and I saw Leverkusen Hamburg, which was amazing. But that was when Leverkusen was like just on the brink. They had Michael Ballack, they had Zé Roberto, they were like kind of they were making moves, and they made the Champions League final, not long after. So that was like the one German team that I kind of cared about. And then Landon Donovan went there for a minute. Not many people know that, but
young Dimitar Berbatov was there too. They had some great players.
Yeah, so they're a team I've always liked.
You mentioned Dusseldorf, and that's actually funny you said that, because when I went over to Germany in 2020, my first Eintracht Frankfurt match was at Fortuna Dusseldorf. Did a weekend. And that's my German hockey game I've been to. So very fun city.
Cool.
Check out everything. So it's funny how everything all connects together and all that.
Very much so. Yeah. Very much so.
We know you got everything to getting ready. Further embolden the future leaders of the world and schools and everything like that. Do you have any things that you want, any closing thoughts or anything you want to provide, as well as maybe anywhere that people can check you out, whether socials or anything like that?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I guess I'll start with the last thing. I don't have much of a online presence, so I don't know that there's any way to follow me, but maybe let's just have a chat in person. I'm often at the field house. I guess, I'd love to end on just a note of thanks. This summer was so special, and it was really neat for me to be, when we got to host those playoff games, like, to have my family there, my wife, my children, some very close friends. And it was just such an exciting time. And there's no way it would have felt that way and been so exciting if it wasn't for, all the support that exists for this club. And so, just want to thank everybody out there, the type of people that tune into podcasts like this one, the ones that really care about the club and have a real genuine interest in it and the people involved. To elaborate on my thought earlier regarding Manchester United, and the fact that I kind of felt this weird connection to the players at that time. They were brought to life for me. I think that's been the secret sauce for Detroit City FC. You look at the end of a men's game, and you got guys like Michael Bryant who are getting beckoned by the coaching staff to get into the locker room because he's still out there shaking hands, taking selfies. I mean, when he talks to my two kids, it's like the highlight of their week because he really engages them and he asks them how they're doing and he cares and he remembers. And when you have people like that on a team, at a club, that's the recipe for success. And I think our women did the same thing. One last quick little anecdote that I think is a testament to the greatness of the group that we had this summer. A college friend of mine, she's from Minneapolis, St. Paul area in Minnesota, and she's a huge Minnesota Aurora fan. So when she heard that they were coming here for the playoffs, she and her daughter was at camp, and her husband had to be there to pick up her daughter, but she took her son on a road trip to come to the Friday night games, and she watched with her son the Aurora Indy 11 game, and then they stayed and watched our game against Riverlight. And she was a very close college friend of mine, and they turned it into like a weekend. And if Aurora and DCFC had lost, she would have gone home. But because we won, she stayed for the weekend and visited some friends. And then her son and her came to the big win on that Sunday. And over the course of that weekend, I introduced her to Sophia Romine and to Kate and Allie Childers, and made sure they were connected, because my friend goes to all the University of Minnesota women's games with her family. And fast forward, well, it was obviously an amazing weekend, right? But fast forward, I got a text from her this week with pictures from the most recent Minnesota women's game. And it's like Sophia Romine and her son, like taking a picture, and the Childers sisters and her daughter taking a picture. And there's a picture of a mini ball with a bunch of signatures on it. And she said, my son had to miss the last game, so the Childers sisters left this mini ball in the locker room and had all the players sign it, and they gave it to him this game. So like, this is a woman that they met a few weeks ago, randomly introduced by their coach, and they're giving him the Michael Bryant treatment, where they're just like totally all in on that relationship. And you asked me for closing thoughts, and here I am talking about this. Sorry, I'm all over the place. But
no, that's part of it.
That brings it home.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we got something really special here, and it was an honor to be a part of it. It was an honor to be the coach of this wonderful team, and it continues to be an honor to be involved with a club where we have players that people connect to and a team that people identify with, and I think that'll see us through, whether we're winning or not.
Dave Dwaihy, as always, a pleasure to talk to you, a pleasure to gain your thoughts, have the chats with on there. We know this isn't going to be the last time we saw to. All we can say is when it comes to the women's side of Detroit City FC, we experienced amazing amounts, but the best is yet to come. So stay tuned.
Cheers.